Życzymy Państwu przyjemnej podróży.
Hello and good afternoon. I am really thrilled to be here in Łódź, and I'm really honored to host meeting with a brilliant Czech writer, Petra Hůlová. Petra, hello, dzień dobry.
Hello, dzień dobry.
It's really funny to speak to Czech author, being Polish journalist, and to do it in English. I think it's quite interesting, but let's try it. I mean, English is a universal language. However, probably we could communicate without
Możemy
it.
też mówić po polsku, ja po polsku trochę też mówię i wszystko jest dla mnie do
Polish and
zrozumienia.
at least understand everything,
Język angielski.
but we have
Just to make it
selected
easy for
English.
everyone, we will speak in English. However, we already talked that maybe we will read some excerpts from the book in Polish, and you will do it with your beautiful Czech melody. But anyway, Petra Hůlová, as I said, a brilliant Czech writer. I'm really happy to be here and to have this 1 hour with you. However, not the entire hour will be mine, because all of you, ladies and gentlemen, you are invited to ask questions at the end. First, I will have this pleasure. The focus of today's meeting will be your novel, Macocha. It is a story about a woman. It is a story about female voice, female perspective, about how this voice and this perspective of woman is seen, is perceived, is conveyed, both in society and in literature. So we will talk about language, we will talk about what it means, women's literature, and why does it oftentimes sound as an insult, and is it right? Or maybe we should redefine it, maybe we should find, the new definition, and to free this term from this weakness that is oftentimes related to it. But let's start with the title, because I guess the title is quite interesting. I checked how that sounds in Czech, and I realized that it's exactly the same. Macocha, this is Polish title, it's also Czech title,
Yes,
yeah?
yes.
So let's all elaborate. It doesn't mean exactly the same thing in Polish and in Czech.
Yeah, well, even though the Czech title is also Macocha, in Czech, Macocha, what Macocha is in Polish is in Czech Macecha, but the title is Macocha because Macocha is this place everyone knows in Czech Republic. It's this big gorge. It's a part of a cave system we have in Czech Republic. So it's this big gorge, this big deep thing that goes under the ground. So that kind of for me represents this kind of deep dive that the narrator takes into herself, but also this Macocha a little bit resembles of Macecha, the Polish Macocha. So it's just little interesting thing on the side that even though the titles are the same in both languages, they don't bear the same meaning.
Because in Czech we have double meaning. One is symbolic, this gorge that you dive in very deep, where sunlight doesn't necessarily go that far down. You can be lost down this gorge. You cannot be heard from the deep down on the surface. And I guess that this is very important for the story, and this is very important for the entire theme of how women are being heard, how they were heard in the past, how maybe, hopefully that will be the conclusion, that are heard more now, hopefully because of literature, because of books like your novels. But there is also the second meaning, the direct meaning, macocha in Polish, in English, stepmother. And, you know, I thought that since we will be talking about the language, this is maybe the first word that it would be interesting to focus on, because macocha is so charged. It's so charged with this negative implications. Ojczym, which is stepfather, is not. I guess it tells us a lot about how women world and the things that are within the realm of feminine issues are named very strangely sometimes, and I wonder why.
Well, maybe we could start, not to be so theoretical, with a little excerpt that I will read, and maybe that will illustrate well the language and the emotional and mental world of the novel, and maybe it will take me somewhere, I wonder where, and I will say something about it. Maybe the third one, or the first one, as you wish, Agata. We can start with the first. Okay.
Let's go with the first then.
Yeah, will be my first time. I will be reading in Polish my book. I would like to thank Julia Różewicz for her brilliant translation. I think it was awarded, or at least nominated for an award, and definitely deserves it. Hope you will understand. A tak poza tym jestem ascetyczną introwertystką ze skłonnością do słownego ekshibicjonizmu.
Introvert with some trait that means that I can talk a lot and do not offer any meaning, or vice versa. I can offer this meaning using different words, and if you would say that there is a smile, I would say you didn't have to. I don't smile often, usually when I am alone and no one sees me. Or maybe when you installed my internet and you painted the walls of my room, you also installed a camera, and now you can see when I am smiling. And then you complain that I smile and laugh much more rarely with you compared with when I'm alone. When I am cooking my soup, I'm laughing and smiling.
Jest to taka spowiedź, taki monolog.
Yes, this is a monologue
of this lady in her, I don't know, 40s, let's say. She is an author, she is a writer, but she writes romances, which is this women's literature, as it is called in Czech, usually relates to this romance literature of soft erotics and these cliché stories and so on. So she is a writer of this kind of literature. At the same time, she is mother, she is alcoholic, and she finds herself in this situation of urgency to open up for herself and go into this gorge, into this macocha in Czech, in herself, and speak up and open up to basically you, because she is a lot of this text she shouts out of her balcony, and together she drinks a lot. So it's this space in between real memories and surreal dreams triggered by alcohol, and her being partly very sincere and very self-critical and, let's say, interesting in her thoughts, but being also very unreliable narrator, and also being sincere at times, but not being sincere at other times. And so she's not very likable. I would say she's not this type of voice you would identify with easily, or you would identify with at all. But that's how I do my characters, my narrators. These people are usually difficult to identify with, because what I want to do is kind of draw this landscape of emotions and thoughts that trigger dialogue for the reader, but also it's my inner dialogue. So it's this space of disturbance and, let's say, discomfort, and particular emotionality that relates to that discomfort, what I intend to do in my texts, not offer a model or like show, how it should be with women, or how what a feminism means, or how you should behave or shouldn't behave, and who is victim of what, exactly. This I am not interested to do. I mean, I prefer to complicate things more than make any kind of black and white statement. So yes.
I thought that the book is quite deceiving, if you can say so, because
that's a very good adjective. Yeah.
Oh yes, all right. It's deceiving, I thought, because the cover is so nice. It's pink. It's warm and cozy, and you start reading. And I mean, when I started reading the book, I couldn't stop laughing, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is such a funny novel." But then, the deeper you dive into this gorge, into this macocha, right, it becomes more and more difficult, and sometimes it becomes irritating. As you said, the main character, the protagonist, named Julia, she's not very likable. I mean, and it's difficult sometimes to listen to her. Sometimes you have this urge as a reader, or at least I had this urge as a reader, to say, oh my God, please stop talking at least for a moment. But I guess it's not a coincidence. That's the challenge. That's the challenge for the reader, but it's also a challenge in a broader sense, because I thought I mean, that's the question actually I would like to ask. Is it a coincidence that the book is written in the form of monologue? Monologue is not a dialogue. When you make monologue, you are not sure if anyone listens to you. You don't have a partner. Is this... what's the reason behind this choice to make this book a monologue, this book of a woman, of this 40-something-year-old woman dealing with all these, issues?
Well, I have to say that so far I wrote 12 books, and 4 of them were translated to or 5 were translated to Polish, and most of my books are told in a first person, so they are monologues of sorts, and that's my writerly strategy that somehow fits to who I am as a writer, because the way I write is basically that I empathize with my character. I go into my character and I speak through my character, and my character is always partly myself and partly someone else, someone I despise too and I cannot agree with, and particularly to find the right balance and the right tone for such a character is the most difficult thing in the beginning. What to say more? Well, I want to talk about, let's say, these patterns, these topics of the book. Also, I mean, they are related to female agenda or to feminism, if we want to frame it that way, even though this type of framing, it's just all around and it's getting this kind of another cliche lens we tend to look through onto the world. But whatever, she is a writer. This author, this narrator is a writer, and writing is her passion. And she is also mom, and she has these 2 kids. And you never know when she speaks true and when she lies, but obviously her relation to her kids is a little bit strange. Maybe she didn't have really put enough attention to them. Maybe she was too much obsessed with her world, with her imagination and writing, and her kids were more a little bit on the side. Maybe they were molested, possibly. There are traces of that. It's awkward, even though she at the same time loves them a lot. It's just dubious what happens there, and so it's this kind of work versus like kids' dilemma is there present in an odd way, because she is loving mom, but at the same time she is awkward mom, and she puts a lot of energy into her work, but her work are basically these romance novels that are not very good. So maybe it's just can be a commentary on the side on the topic of like women kind of preferring work to kids in a way, but then maybe sometimes we shall question what kind of work is it really, because I think there might be works that are worth other things being let's say put on a second track, but then there are works that are not worth it at all. And I wonder how it is in case of my narrator, because most of my questions I pose there, the answers are mystery to myself too, and the text is just a way for me to dig deeper and find an explanation, but most of the important things there stay partly blurred or unexplained to me as well.
I think I found a fragment of the book that perfectly portrays just what you've just said. So why don't you read, this one? It's about motherhood and all this constant feeling of being guilty.
Jestem styraná, rozumiesz?
I am so tired. Don't you get it? I have never been catching up with you, and you don't care that we have children. And so you not being care was the reaction to children, and the children, was it not for you, would fall off a balcony. So you believe I only use it just to say that writing is an addiction, and all the characters that I form are romantic, and they were created by my guilty conscience, and I would never let them outside. Where would they supposed to go? They were just a bug in an old closet, which will be torn down when somebody remembers about this closet 20 years later. And then we'll provide some garlic bread and we'll distribute it to the guests. Fuck all that.
Right. I love this phrase when she says that all my romantic characters, female characters, are born out of my guilt. I thought it's very interesting that a woman, Julia, the protagonist of Macocha, whose story, life story, is so unromantic. And I mean, and she doesn't even try to romanticize it. Really, her language is very rough. It's, you know, sometimes it stings, it's sharp, that she is actually a writer of romances. So we have very interesting paradox here. But I thought, and that's what I would like to ask you about, all these myths created by culture, myths that are about women, are about women's life, such as motherhood. You know, there's a beautiful romantic myth that pretty much was created by men, by literature written by men, stories told by men, etc., etc. In this book and in your writing, I mean, we don't have to focus only on Macocha, but in general, I guess that. But I mean, this Julia, this protagonist, Shirley, I feel like she is trying to challenge this myth. She's trying to say, no. Enough of that. Now I will tell you the story of motherhood with my own words. They might not be romantic. It might not be pretty. You might not like it. But this is how it sounds. So I think that this is quite an interesting element, not only in terms of literature, but also in terms of social life and understanding what being woman is, really.
Well, I think in nowadays literature in Czech Republic there are many texts, many books, confessions related to motherhood by women who tend to perceive it critically and as something that is like also terrible, tiring, and goes onto your nerves and so on. So I think that this myth has been already broken of sort. This mental myth, it's not anymore. Here, I wrote this book 10 years ago. That's not a long time, but at the same time, it is a long time. Those days, it was not as usual to challenge motherhood critically as harshly as I do it, let's say, in the book. But what I would like to add is that in the book, it's not about let's challenge motherhood and openly say that women are, being tied to home and they, have to take care of kids and it's like all very difficult and not romantic at all. So that's just, to me, uninteresting.
It's not black and white, as you said at the beginning. It's complicated.
The point is that she is not a good mom, but I would say, but also who is, right? And so even though I work with that issue of motherhood not being this great thing, it's not a statement of the book. Mm-hmm. It's just one of the elements that relates to other elements, as her being this alcoholic but also hardworking lady who earns like good money herself, but through work that I don't consider very admirable and also probably some of it stems from her relationship she had as a girl with her mom. You know, it's like we are never just these isolated actors, and always there are these baggages we drag with ourselves. What I want to say is that the language is very important there in terms of it as something that makes the book, makes the narration goes, let's say, as a kind of an emotional river which has its own logic, but it's not a logic of like normal logical reasoning. It's more like logic of her emotions, logic of her alcoholism, how sometimes she drinks and sometimes she doesn't. And also there are words and sentences and metaphors that attract other words and sentences and metaphors. And then sometimes, and she is a writer, sometimes it happens to people who work with words that those words completely like carry you away, and you just like follow more that than the logic of the thing, and then you end up somewhere you didn't have an idea about before that you might ever end up there. So, and that's for me very much what is also important in literature, and that's why literature is not about statements, because there is this always this strong element of language that kind of might carry you away or is in particular antagonistic tension with the sheer like rational message you might want to make, but the language sometimes does not let you make this or completely like subverts it and makes it ridiculous, you know. And so that's language is an element that I feel is strongly there in place, and also in my other books. And I think that nowadays I see more and more books that are trying to carry a mission, you know. But for me, that is not literature. Literature is exactly about the mission always being suspicious, you know. Any mission is very suspicious. And so I don't want to really... Yeah, my language is carrying me away. I wanted to add something. Now I don't. Okay.
It will come back. But I think that it's very interesting. You emphasized a few times that you didn't want to make statement in this book, that it's so much more than you know, political statement. And I guess that it brings me to the question that you kind of started answering, actually. What's the role of literature? Because we started this conversation with this assumption that novels like the ones you write change the narrative. It gives voice to women perspective that probably wasn't conveyed in the literature that was written mostly by men. This is it's a different perspective. It's a different color of emotions. It's the expression is quite different. So on one hand, yes, I guess that literature is oftentimes perceived as a tool of social change, maybe even of political change. But on the other hand, there is this fine line between literature and political manifestation. The question is, should literature, and that's the question for you, how do you treat literature? Should it serve political ends? Should it be engaged? And where to find, as a writer who is, I kind of see that you are engaged, you're not socially indifferent. How to find this fine line between being engaged and being true as a writer to literature?
Well, these are big words and big questions. Thank you. I know what I wanted to say, and now I will finish what I was talking about, and then I will
remind you the question.
yeah, continue with your question. I don't know how is the trend in literature in Poland. Definitely in Czech Republic, there are, topic change and language change in course of the time. Like, in all the literatures, the change of the, let's say, trend, or where is the emphasis of, like, what is interesting literature is in Czech Republic, is basically, it used to be very much the emphasis on language, let's say, still like 15 years ago, it's like, this in the reviews you might have read, like, these like beautiful metaphors, and this like rich language, and what a great descriptions of this and that. And I think nowadays it's getting really more about the ideology, and I don't mean ideology is something bad. Ideology is just like set of ideas you are pursuing. So language is becoming more and more simple and straightforward, and I understand it, and in my books too, my language in my latest books is much more simple than my language in my previous books. So I'm also like basically walking this trend. Sometimes you realize you walk the trend even though you are not aware of it, because there is this spirit of the time that lives in all of us, So you do stuff other people do because you are a prison of the same, time and space. What I wanted to say is that one critic recently compared a language of one writer, Czech writer, to like a Christmas tree, that it's full of like ornaments, and like this, and like who needs it, and it's like old and all that. And so there used to be this kind of ornamentalism, this richness for richness, for richness's sake, but I understand the criticism, but at the same time, I think that, as I mentioned it, the quality of the language is that it intervenes into thinking, and that it changes our thinking, and that it might completely carry away our thoughts and our emotions, and that's what only literature can do, and that's a space where we can enjoy this co-creation of reality by thoughts, emotions, and language. And sometimes I think that it's not being appreciated as much anymore, and literature sometimes tends to be very philosophical and sociological and so on. And novel will never be as good as sociology if it has like sociology goal. If it has a similar goal, sociology will be always better. Philosophy will be always better if the goal of the novel is philosophical. But when the ambition is to show worlds together, to implement the language, to work with it somehow, then it's a space that is only literature's in a way.
And this,
and I forgot probably your question. Yeah. Where do you see the line between engagement and the fact that books, oftentimes we can find examples of writers. Charles Dickens is probably one of the simplest examples to put here, that with his work he changed the political reality. He was advocating for the poor, and some of the legal system has changed in favor of the poor because of the writing. So we have real examples of literature changing political reality, also because it has this, wonderful force of empathy. You can actually understand people that you wouldn't normally be able to understand. So their cause is seen, is heard, is understood better. So that's one part. And the second is how not to cross this line, how not to,
putting it simply, how not to write propaganda, how to be true to literature, writing literature that matters politically, that matters socially?
Well, I think it's very simple. It just has to, maybe it's romantic, but it's just my perspective. Someone else would have other perspective. It just has to stem from your genuine self from inside. And then, you might be passionate really about a story of a, poor children somewhere, and that's something you are obsessed with and you are passionate about, and all that like conditions of group of like working people working under, terrible conditions. So these are your characters, and you just like live with it, and that's your obsession, that's your topic, and you just want to portray it with all your energy and all that. And then in the end, it might be, let's say, a political book and might have an impact. But I believe that in the beginning of that book that ended up as a political one was just very personal passion and very, very probably something very private related to very also private feelings and some private experience, whatever. So that's one thing, and then the other way how stuff is being done, and that's wrong, is that you think that this and that should happen or should not happen, and then you create a story that sort of illustrates your thesis that there should be better working condition, whatever, children shouldn't be poor, whatever. So you have this mission, and then you create your text as as an illustration of your thesis, and that's. I think not a good literature doesn't work. To me, it feels I can always recognize that it was done through that kind of strategy, and it's also a political book, but it's bad. It's bad literature. So I wouldn't say there is no outside line that would kind of mark what is literature and what is already too political and not enough literature. But it's all about the motivation and what the motivation is, and then of course also, let's say, the talent. Then you are better writer or worse writer, and that also has an impact on the work. But yeah.
I thought that it's related to what you said before, that the character of Macocha, the protagonist of Macocha Yuli, that she says things that we might not like. She might challenge us with some of our thoughts, with some of our ideas, and I guess maybe that's a very interesting place where literature can put us, is to put us in a way against our own ideas, our own beliefs, that we kind of are put in a place where we have to struggle when we are, when we are in a condition of huge struggle. Wow, everything I believed in, maybe it's not that nice. Maybe, this feminist character, she does things that seems horrible to me. And this is the place where, when you have strong character, believable character, she might put you in different places you maybe didn't know where that exist, and that you can be there. do you find literature important or powerful? Because you look at me.
I was intentionally looking at you a little bit longer
All right.
because I wanted to convey practically the feeling of discomfort that I am trying to work with in my novels, because I think that space of discomfort is very much something very crucial for a literary text, for me at least. Because, and it's also back to the political aspect of the literature. It's definitely there. I mean, for me, engagement is anything genuinely passionate, you know. So can be political in traditional way, but we can name also political, any kind of, you know, strong passion that relates to the world. But what I wanted to say, that it was about the political aspect. I lost it.
Oh, that's fine. I see that we have less than 20 minutes till the end of this meeting, so I will use my last chance to ask you a question, and then I will.
Oh, yeah, I have it.
You have it. Okay.
Literature for me is something that is here to complicate reality, not to make it easier digestible, more black and white, but like other way around, to like blur it and like, you know, challenge us with something that makes us feel discomfortable, and we have to again like redefine, you know, who we are, and you know, it's like it creates inner struggle, it complicates, and sometimes it is political very much too, but when the political aspect for someone is to like kind of show us, you know, where we shall go and what is right and wrong. That's a political quality that I don't agree with in literature.
Well, if we are looking for a space where reality becomes very complicated and we are challenged and we might feel uncomfortable and uneasy, then certainly apartment of Yuli, of protagonist, of narrator, of Macocha is a place to be. However, it's not easy place, as we already mentioned. My very last question, I will use my last chance. You're talking about how literature should break the order, you know, of things, how it should probably, if I understand correctly, bring some chaos, you know, in a good way, in a creative way, in a challenging way. So what do you think about this order of genre in literature when we say there is women's literature? So what does it even mean? Literature written by women, literature written for women. How do you find yourself with this term, women's literature? Should it stay with us? Should it be erased, or should it be redefined?
Well, and it means nothing. It means what we put into that word, and usually the meaning is either these like romantic romances about love, you know, one meaning, or the other meaning, like whatever is written by a female. And I don't know. I mean, you can use it for both of these examples, and I mean, the problem is that we never talk about men's literature, of course. It's like women's literature, and then there is literature in general, because usually there were these like universal problems and universal people represented by men, and then there is like specific words of like world of a female that is being depicted in like female literature and so on. But I think we might be done with that, aren't we? We are already, I think, identified it, and we don't anymore like recycle it, I believe, as much as we did, even though it's a process. But of course, like this old thing, like this literature, you know, represented by men and universal characters, and this like little ground of like female literature, that's like funny, that's ridiculous, and that's, I hope, non-existent in literary circles in Poland anymore. In Czech, it's dying out. Most of the writers in Czech Republic are females nowadays, like fiction writers, which is, I think, related to the fact that still men are more responsible than females for like feeding the family, and money is so low in literature that basically men cannot afford to be writers, whereas some women can because they have husbands who like bring some money at home, which is kind of sad. So it's not about emancipation, but it's more about the field getting so poor. It's not being very popular when I say it, but I think it's partly the truth. It's so sad, but definitely, the literature now is more frequently written by women authors in my country.
Okay, so all right, I think it's moment to bring microphone to the audience. If anyone would like to ask a question, this is the moment to do that. I think that also we can agree that question might be asked in Polish, right? Absolutely. So there's no need to do that in English.
No English
so
needed.
Let's feel free and comfortable and relaxed. I cannot believe.
I love this moment of discomfort when there are no questions, and let's not interrupt it. Let's stay with the discomfort.
Magda Granosik. As you said, Petra, po polsku. Powiedziałaś, że literatura...
You said that literature is meant to contribute chaos to our lives. That's the goal of literature. This is how I understood it. But let's look at the protagonist, Julia. She's not likable. That's my general impression. She does terrible things. She says terrible things. Her thinking is even worse. And she is a woman of middle age. Somebody could perceive her as a mother, a wife. Well, she has an apartment, she has a kid. She has a good status, but the truth is it's completely different. So the question is, do you even give her a chance to like herself? Does she like herself? So do you give her a chance, or do you give us women a chance who are at this point of our life? Because sooner or later we all get to this point of not liking ourselves. What's your perception of that?
Dziękuję za to pytanie.
Thank you for this question.
Ja też mam też taki punkt.
I also am at this point of not liking myself, and it started in my childhood. I've had it since childhood, and I used it for writing. It's a point of my alter ego. That's one layer in me that I actually have a dialogue with, and it's a side of me that I play with. It's a side of me that I work with in my books, and my character, my protagonist, has this layer of not liking herself. So sometimes in my life I struggle with that, and that is an issue. I think it comes from cultural environment, how women are raised. They always look at themselves critically. I don't think men are that critical of themselves. They think, hey, I did something great, I look good, I'm trying. So you see, women have a different attitude, and it complicates our lives. So in private life, I struggle with that. I use it in my writing, but I like it the way you noticed it. You identified something that exists, that is there. I hope our daughters or their daughters will not experience this to such extent, and that's all I can say about that.
Bardzo dziękuję za odpowiedź.
Thank you so much for this response, and I like it that in our weaknesses we can find the source of our strength, energy, and what we think will ground us will actually give us wings. Well, it may work this way, but I believe it's better to have a source of strength in something different than that. Thank you.
Czy jeszcze ktoś chciałby
Anybody
zadać
else?
pytanie? Jestem przekonana, I'm sure that... Zastanawiam się, czy mówić po polsku, czy po angielsku w ogóle.
I'm not sure if I should speak Polish or English,
angielskiego.
because it seems that most of you don't need the English version. Okay. I can read another excerpt from my book. When I was her age, old women like to say about their daughters, and I remember myself as a girl who was afraid of everything. I was a walking fear. Who was very skinny, like a battery. And before I spoke something out loud, before I said something out loud, I had to practice twice. The older I got, the more my voice took a place ahead of me, and actually my head would produce things before I was able to analyze that. When you are drinking something for courage, you are supposed to eat something greasy. Young people don't know that, and grease is a preservative, just as sugar. So moments that you want to forget stick to your greasy cortex, and this is how we start writing. Something has to be fucked up first, and the more tedious the job, the better, because it gives you subjects. What is interesting is that other creators got their shit out when they were younger, and now they are the literary models and confident writers. And then you hear those words, had I known, I wouldn't have done this or that. Well, if you are certain of the way you're taking, it doesn't mean it will be paved in roses. But now I become to be the boring one. Another cliche is to have your dreams, and dreams are like legs. Everybody has at least one leg. So what?
Proszę Państwa, to była wielka, wielka przyjemność być tutaj.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it was a great pleasure to host Petra Hůlova. I almost called you Julia. But there are some similarities, right? Yes, and I have one more association. I would like to thank Julia Różewicz for her translation. And she actually asked me, why is the protagonist's name Julia? Is it because of her? Well, no, it's not. If any of you are interested, I will be downstairs, so you can buy a book and I can sign your book.
Komunikat bardzo ważny.
And there is an important message if you feel encouraged, and I don't believe you don't after all those interesting excerpts. You might want to buy a book, or if you have a book of your own, you could have Petra sign it, and the bookstore located on the ground floor is the place where you can meet, see Petra and ask for her for her signature. Petra Hůlova, an excellent Czech writer, author of numerous books. We selected Macocha for today as a reference for today's discussion, but I encourage you to learn a broad variety of her writings. Petra, thank you so much.
Jedzą kanapki z kawiorem.
Nadzwyczajna kasa.
Obrażanie dziennikarz telewizji polskiej.
Chodzi o działania polityczne.
Przygotowanie ofiar dla pedofilów.
Für Deutschland.
TVP Info. Włącz się na nowo.
Radość, nadzieja, życie, wyzwanie, pasja, pamięć, zaufanie, pokój, jedność. Słowa tworzą świat. Polskie Radio. Źródło wiarygodnych informacji.
Plany biznesowe powstają z marzeń. Dlatego nie ma dwóch takich samych firm. Jedni chcą działać na całym świecie. Innym cały świat mieści się w dłoni. Sukces biznesu to nie tylko jego wielkość, ale też szczęście, jakie przynosi ludziom. PKO Bank Polski.
Uwielbiam szycie w sieci. Wczoraj podszyłem się pod wnuczka, wieczorem uszyłem intrygę na apce randkowej, a dziś planuję grubymi nićmi szyte oszustwo z promocją. Tak się szyje.
Na oszustów są sposoby. Zapoznaj się z poradami ekspertów na niedajsiepodszyć.pl.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it. And how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people, but for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.
Ihrer Ausreise.
Polskie Radio.
Jedynka.
Rodzina spółek Pelion to 12 000 osób pracujących w ponad 300 spółkach w Polsce, Szwecji, Wielkiej Brytanii i na Litwie. Jesteśmy liderem w branży ochrony zdrowia. Od 1990 roku dbamy o długość i jakość życia. Pracować z nami możesz w jednym z 7 obszarów.
Zapraszamy do Trójki. Od nowa.
Trójka. Program Trzeci Polskiego Radia.
Czy wytrzymasz klockowe tortury? Ze stoickim spokojem. Czy w twardych negocjacjach zachowasz zimną krew? Czy poddasz się dobrowolnej eksmisji ze swojego łóżka? Brawo! Test na obecność serca zaliczony. To znaczy, że ty też możesz być rodzicem zastępczym. Dowiedz się jak na testserca.pl.